And good evening from New York. I'm Ali Velshi in for Chris Hayes. Everywhere you turn, on all fronts, Donald Trump is flailing, both domestically and internationally. His agenda, such as one exists, has been an unmitigated disaster. Now, none of this is particularly new, but today is one of those days when it feels like it's all sort of coming to a head. And the end result is that Donald Trump has become, in just 18 months, one of the most deeply unpopular presidents in American history. Now, you clearly don't need me to tell you that. This has been the same story from basically every pollster. His approval rating is somewhere in the mid to low 30s, 33% according to Reuters, 35% according to YouGov. Basically, 2/3 of the country thinks the guy is bad at his job. Now, the last third seems to be his floor, the people who will seemingly continue to support Donald Trump no matter his ineptitude or his broken promises, but they are firmly in the minority. Obviously, a significant reason for this polling trend is the economy. Trump ran on solving the cost of living crisis, on bringing prices down on day one. He promised a lot of things on day one, but he's only made things worse. But just set the economy aside for a moment. I'm going to get back to it, but set it aside for a moment, because even if you're part of the roughly 30% who think that Donald Trump is doing a fine job on that issue, we have a bunch of new developments just today that should give you pause about where we're headed as a country. First, there is this disastrous war with Iran, which is dragging on with no particular end in sight. Remember back in June, Trump signed a memorandum of understanding with Iran. The so-called ceasefire was supposed to last 60 days, while an actual peace deal was negotiated. Well, the deadline for that passed on Monday with no such deal, and the war is no closer to being over. What's more, Trump has handed Iran a tool that in some ways rivals the power of a nuclear weapon: control over the flow of commerce through the Strait of Hormuz. That gives the Iranian government far more leverage on the international stage than a bomb. There's no turning back the clock on this one. Iran controls the strait, and barring a ground invasion of U.S.-led troops and the loss of countless lives that would entail, Iran is likely to control it for some time. And what's Donald Trump's response? A promise to declare the strait a new U.S. territory, which is once again a totally meaningless Trump promise, and one that does nothing to either end this war or, back to square one on the economy, bring down your gas prices. Even if all Donald Trump did in his 4-year term was to start this war and hand Iran the Strait of Hormuz, it would still rank among the worst presidencies in modern history. But unfortunately, that's not all that Donald Trump has done. Exhibit B tonight is this ridiculous trade war that he launched on the world. Our allies simply no longer trust us as a good faith trading partner, and with good reason. Take a look at the complete debacle with Canada. Trump is threatening 50% tariffs on our ally to the north because he's frustrated with the USMCA, which is the trade deal that he himself negotiated in his first term. It looks like there may be some tentative agreement to stop the new tariffs, but fundamentally, our relationship with Canada, my home country, as you know, has already been irreparably altered, because we've proven to be a belligerent force. They are actually sick of this back and forth. Remember, Trump tried to pull the same stunt last year over basically non-existent concerns regarding fentanyl trafficking from Canada. But the fact of the matter is, America relies heavily on trade with Canada. Fully 70% of all Canadian exports come directly to this country. We rely on Canada for all sorts of things, but especially for energy. It's a guy named Doug Ford. He's a very conservative, some might argue Trump-like premier of Ontario. It's like a governor. He threatened to essentially turn the lights out here in New York City, to cut us off from Canadian electricity, which is abundant in Canada because Canada uses hydroelectricity, like Niagara Falls, and nuclear energy. That would be an actual disaster for the United States. And believe me, China is more than happy to take our place as Canada's energy trade partner. They will also import every ton of potash, every barrel of diesel, every pallet of lumber that Canada declined to sell to the United States. Again, there was no need for any of this. Canada was not a belligerent partner. They're an ally. Trump just decided to tear up that relationship on a whim. And then it happened again with South Korea this week. Trump just cut short long-planned joint military exercises with that key ally. And he said, this is the weird part, he said he's doing it out of respect for the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, apparently, or maybe because North Korea has so many nukes.
Thank you. Are you exchanging written letters with Kim Jong-un?
Can't tell you that.
And are you hoping
But I get along with him. And you know what? The fact that I get along with him, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. He has 57 very powerful nuclear weapons. Should have never allowed it to happen. They should have never allowed it. If I were president, I wouldn't have allowed it. But he's got him. I get along with him very well.
South Korea, understandably, feels betrayed. They want absolutely nothing to do with us now. The president wants total military independence from the United States, and it's hard to fault them for that. But destroying that relationship accomplishes nothing for America, and it makes nobody safer, except maybe the North Koreans. It doesn't even actually provide better relations with North Korea's leader, the guy who has those 57 nukes. Kim's regime says these developments change nothing. So what was the point? I could go on like this. Meanwhile, here at home, Trump's extremism has not subsided. His federal agents are still terrorizing American streets. The mass deportation campaign continues unabated. And again, nothing is happening here that actually benefits you. Later on in the hour, I'll speak with Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. He's currently suing Texas to try and extradite an ICE agent who shot one of Ellison's constituents through a door. You just need to read a pamphlet on policing to understand that you're not supposed to shoot through a door. Just a sliver of accountability is what Ellison wants for the marauding forces that killed Renee Good and Alex Preddy for expressing their First Amendment rights. All of those reasons and more are why Donald Trump is so unpopular. It is the economy, yes, but it's not only the economy. And if you want to send a message about the direction of this country, about a belligerent foreign policy and more endless regime change wars, and about immigration agents acting as an occupying force on American streets, you're going to have that opportunity 76 days from now on November 3rd. Ben Rhodes served as Deputy National Security Advisor under President Obama. He's now the co-host of Crooked Media's Pod Save the World. He joins me now. Ben, I think most people will make a decision on November 3rd, probably based on the economy. And that's fine. Most elections, as you know, are actually about people's economic well-being, and they probably should be. But Donald Trump just gives us reason after reason on a daily basis to not trust him and his custodianship of the government. Canada is just a simple example. It's almost a benign relationship because most people don't know how important that relationship is, and that's fine. But it's actually quite important.
Yeah, I mean, it's our biggest trading partner, among other things. And I think, Ali, the thing about the economy is this is the predominant issue, right? Inequality is out of control. Prices are still up. People are working hard, but they can't keep up. But these things you're talking about are not foreign policy issues separate from the economy.
Yes.
And I think that's why he's in such a particularly disastrous situation. The war in Iran is both a catastrophic and stupid foreign policy error. It is also contributing to higher prices. It's raising the price at the pump. It's going to increase prices for things like fertilizer for farmers. A lot of stuff goes through that strait. Having tariff wars with Canada is going to hurt American consumers. Tariffs, by definition, make things cost more. So part of what is so astonishing is not only is he doing nothing about the economy, he's focused on all these other things, but also the things that he is focused on are making the economy worse. Tariffs make the prices worse. The war makes the prices worse. It just feels like we're in a tailspin here, a spiral with no end in sight.
Again, Canada feels benign because we don't really talk or think about it much because it's been that good a relationship for so long that we don't have to. But there are real conversations in Canada about energy that is going to be sold to China that was otherwise going to be sold to the United States. America doesn't want that to happen, by the way. Canada has started to see the import of Chinese electric vehicles. The conversation that Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, had about cutting off electricity supplies. I don't think that's likely to happen, but Canadians have stopped buying American goods. Once you wreck relationships like that, even if a friendly president comes in next time, these countries start getting used to the idea that we have other markets, we have other people to deal with, we have other people to sell our things to. Yeah,
there's short-term and then more medium and long-term problems. I mean, the tariffs, as I mentioned, raise prices. There are other economic indicators. Travel and tourism from Canada is way down. That's billions of dollars. That's real money that is not coming into the American economy that used to come into the American economy. More fundamentally, as you say, though, Ali, what's happening is other countries see the United States not just as unreliable. Like the first time that Trump got elected, it was like, these guys are unreliable. Can we trust them? We don't know who they're going to elect next. Now, America seems dangerous, right? I mean, Trump has threatened to try to make Canada the 51st state. He's ratcheted up these trade wars on them. And so if they start cutting trade deals, as they already have with countries like China, other countries are going to follow suit too. And suddenly you're going to have supply chains that avoid the United States. Suddenly you're going to have people looking to sell things to places other than the United States. Suddenly you're going to have a place like South Korea that we've seen benefits from the South Korean economy taking off, being a close trading partner, a close geopolitical partner. Suddenly they're going to say, look, China's right here. They're next to us. We better make deals with them. And the United States is going to get left behind. So there's both the short-term damage of what's Trump doing, which people can feel in the prices they're paying. But then there's this medium and longer-term horizon where the United States could get left behind by a bunch of countries saying, hey, we need to make deals without these people because they just simply can't be trusted.